Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in verse number 142 that the foolish among the people will say, what has turned them from their qibla to which they used to face? What has turned them from the qibla or their qibla to which they used to face? Say, to Allah belongs both east and west. He guides whom He wills to the straight path, to the straight way. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in this verse that we'll cover today, verse number 142 of Surah Al-Baqarah, we've now begun the second juz of the Qur'an. Alhamdulillah, we finished the first juz. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the preceding verses, as I mentioned last week and the weeks before that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was mentioning about the virtues of Ibrahim alayhi salam. The virtues, the station, the place of Ibrahim alayhi salam in the path of revelation amongst the messengers that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent to mankind. He was reminding the Muslims as well as the people of the book, Ahlul Kitab, from Bani Israel and the Christians, of the place and the virtues of Ibrahim alayhi salam and the fact that he really carried the true message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that he was a mark or a symbol, a role model for Tawheed and surrender, for Islam and Tawheed, for surrender and worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. He was the role model. So these are the virtues of Ibrahim alayhi salam that the Muslims were being reminded of, the Christians were being reminded of, the Jews were being reminded of, as well as the polytheists, the mushrikeen of the Arabs, were being reminded of Ibrahim alayhi salam because they, as we mentioned, have a close affinity to the house, to Kaaba in Mecca, which they know was built by Ibrahim alayhi salam. So one of the reasons why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was mentioning these virtues, reminding everybody of Ibrahim alayhi salam and his way, is in preparation to give the Muslims this new responsibility of revelation, of carrying guidance, of inviting mankind to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to revive the true worship of one God. To revive the true worship of one God. This is the preparation that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving the believers, as well as the preparation of the change of the qibla. The preparation of the change of the qibla from Baytul Maqdis to Kaaba in Mecca, to the Haram in Mecca. This also signifies the change in responsibility, that this ummah, this final ummah, has a final book, which is the Qur'an. It has a final messenger, which is Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. It also has a final direction to which it prays towards, which is the Kaaba in Mecca. So this is the preparation up to this verse, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala informs us that some people will say, what made the Muslims change their qibla? As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says here, that the fools, سَيَقُولُ السُّفَهَاء, the fools will say, the fools amongst mankind, they will say, what has turned them from their qibla to which they used to face? Meaning, this ayah, if you translate it, it's future tense. سيقول السفهاء من الناس ما ولاهم عن قبلتهم التي كانوا عليها. That the fools amongst mankind will say, or fools amongst the people will say, what has made them change their qibla from which they were upon. So it's in the future tense. So there's a difference of opinion here amongst the scholars that this verse, has the qibla already been changed? Or is this verse talking about the future? That the qibla will be changed, and then some people will say, what made them change their qibla? There's a difference of opinion. Many of the scholars say that this verse was revealed after the changing of the qibla. It was revealed after the changing of the qibla. The reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the future tense, sayaqulu, they will say. Sometimes you can use future to mean the past. This is one explanation. Or some of the mufassirun, they said that because they will continue to say this, therefore it's still relevant. Even after the Qibla is changed, after a while they will continue to question this. So therefore, this is still relevant. Others say that no, this verse was revealed before the changing of the Qibla. This verse was revealed before the changing of the Qibla. So these are two opinions there. And Imam al-Bukhari, he reports in his Sahih that the news of the change of the Qibla was conveyed to some of the Ansar while they were performing the Asr prayer towards Bayt al-Maqdis. Upon hearing that, they immediately changed their direction and faced the Kaaba. It is also reported in the Sahihain that Ibn Umar radiallahu an reported that while the people were in Masjid al-Quba, they were performing the Fajr prayer, the dawn prayer. A man came and said, a portion of the Qur'an was revealed tonight, meaning before Fajr, to Allah's Messenger, and he was commanded, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to face the Kaaba. Therefore, face the Kaaba. They were facing towards Ash-Sham, meaning Jerusalem, Bayt al-Maqdis, so they turned towards the Kaaba. And this is the famous story that everyone knows, and the Masjid al-Quba is still there, Masjid al-Qiblatain, that people say, call it the Masjid of the two Qiblas, because people were praying towards one direction, towards Bayt al-Maqdis, Jerusalem, when the man came and informed them that the Prophet ﷺ had received revelation, a command to change the Qibla to the Kaaba, to Mecca. So they were facing towards north, then they turned around and faced towards south, towards Mecca, to the Qibla, the new Qibla that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded. Some people say, which direction were the Muslims praying? In Mecca. This is definitely proven that after Hijrah to Medina, from the beginning for about a year and a few months, the Muslims were definitely praying in the direction of Bayt al-Maqdis, Jerusalem. This is very proven, it's authentic, it's in the hadith, Sahih hadith. The Qur'an verse indicates to that. But what about in Mecca? Where were they praying towards? Again, different narrations. They say none of them are 100% authentic, but different views are given. Some people said that even in Mecca, the direction was to pray towards Bayt al-Maqdis, Jerusalem, but the Prophet ﷺ used to put the Kaaba in front of him and pray towards Jerusalem. So he's praying towards Kaaba and Jerusalem. Some people said no, at that time it was just, the direction was Bayt al-Maqdis, Jerusalem, and the Muslims used to pray towards Jerusalem. There's different narrations. Some scholars said none of them are very authentic, but this was the understanding in different narrations. So here, in the verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to as-sufaha. Who are these people? The sufaha, as we mentioned, this word came before in previous verses, that the one who turns away from the millah of Ibrahim alayhi salam is Safi. He is the one who is foolish, who's of shallow intellect, who has no intellect. He's stupid, he's foolish, right? He's of a shallow intellect. The one who turns away from the millah, from the way of Ibrahim alayhi salam, he is Safi. So here, Sufaha is the same meaning. Those who are foolish, those who have no intellect, those who don't think, those who are shallow in their knowledge. So these are the people, amongst the people, this expression means, سَيَقُولُ السُّفَهَاءُ مِنَ النَّاسِ. It means that amongst the people, there are different types of people, and one portion of those people are sufaha, are the foolish. There's only one section amongst, say, a whole community of 10,000 people. There's only a few hundred who are described as sufaha. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it very clear here that the only people who will say this are the sufaha. So whoever says this, whoever makes this question, that why did the Muslims change their qibla, he is foolish. He falls automatically into that category of sufaha, of the foolish, of the shallow, of intellect. No intellect doesn't use their minds. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it very clear that this is the nature of those people who will question, or who have questioned according to the two narrations. But who are they actually? Again, are they Bani Israel? Are they the Christians? Are they the polytheists, the Arabs? Again, different narrations have come. Some scholars said, no, it's the polytheists. It's the mushriks of the Arabs. Because they were hoping, what they were saying when they heard about the change of the Qibla, they were, in some narrations, they were saying, Muhammad, he has changed, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, has changed his Qibla from Bayt al-Maqdis to the Kaaba. He's coming back to our deen. Because the Kaaba is something we value. This is something somewhere where we worship. That means soon he will return back to his deen. So this is what the mushriks were saying. Some narrations say that Bani Israel, some amongst Bani Israel used to say that they were pleased when the Muslims came to Medina and they chose Bayt al-Maqdis as the Qibla towards which they used to pray. They were pleased with this because it's towards their direction of a holy place, or a place that they also hold in high esteem, a center of worship for Bani Israel. So they were pleased, but when this turning happened, change of Qibla happened, they were disappointed and they started questioning. So some narrations mention it's them, and some narrations say it's the hypocrites amongst the Muslims. Obviously, outwardly they claim to be Muslims, but inwardly they were disbelievers. So it's the hypocrites, the munafiqun amongst the community who would say this. So in other words, in summary, whoever said this question, what is the question? That why have the Muslims changed their Qibla? And it's like in Arabic, the expression, it's not just a simple innocent question. You know, مَا وَلَّاهُمْ عَنْ قِبْلَتِهِمُ الَّتِي كَانُوا عَلَيْهَا. It's in a way like disparaging, in a way it's like questioning in a mocking kind of way. That look at these people, 1 year, 3 months, they're praying this way, now they've changed their religion, they changed their way of worship, now they're changing direction, they come to another way. It's a kind of disparaging way of questioning. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, regardless of any of these groups, whoever says this, whoever has this thinking, this questioning or this disparaging, rebuking the Muslims about their change in Qibla, they fit this description of sufaha. These are the people who have no intellect, who have no deep understanding of anything. Then, what is the reason that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if it is according to some of the scholars that this verse came before the change of the Qibla, what is the reason of informing everybody of this before the change of the Qibla? That this is what these people will say. Well, one of the reasons is that when the believers were introducing anything new, people were criticizing them. Anything new, whether it's fasting or whether it's this change of the Qibla, anything new, according to the people around them, they would criticize the Muslims and make fun of them or mock them. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is informing the believers that when you change your Qibla, after I command to do so, these people will say this. They will mock you, they will criticize you, they will question that what is the matter with these people? They're changing their Qibla. The reason Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala informs you before is why? Because as you know, your opponents, if you already tell your opponents that I'm going to do this, but I bet you will say this. Your response will be this. You will criticize me. If you already told him that this is what they're going to say, then that criticism loses the impact after he says it. If after 1 month you actually do that thing, and then your opponent or your enemies, they turn around and say that, you'll simply say, well, I told you you're going to respond in this way. I've done my bit. Now, I told you a month ago, you will respond in this way. This is what you're going to say. So it neutralizes the impact of their criticism. This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala informed them and informed the believers too, that this is what they will say. It's also, this is the miracle of the Qur'an, to predict what will happen, to predict the future. It's also a sign from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responds with what? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that say, قُلْ لِلَّهِ الْمَشْرِقُ وَالْمَغْرِبُ يَهْدِي مَنْ يَشَاءُ إِلَى صِرَاطٍ مُسْتَقِيمٍ. Say, to Allah belongs both east and the west. He guides whom He wills to the straight way. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says in the Qur'an, فَأَيْنَمَا تُوَلُّوا فَثَمَّ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ. So wherever you turn, there is the face of Allah. And also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, this is also in surah Al-Baqarah, ليس البر أن تولوا وجوهكم قبل المشرق والمغرب ولكن البر من آمن بالله. And then to the end of the rest of the ayah, to the other ayahs, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that it is not al-bir, piety, righteousness. It's not righteousness or piety that you turn your faces towards the east or the west in prayers, meaning. But al-bir, righteousness, piety, is the one, is in the one who believes in Allah. Or piety is in believing in Allah. Is the one who believes in Allah has righteousness, has al-bir. Meaning that the best action is to follow the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not about whether you're facing the east or facing the west. It's not about directions. It's not about particular places in the east. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or the west. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لِلَّهِ الْمَشْرِقُ وَالْمَغْرِبُ. That for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the east and the west. What about the north and the south? Is that also for Allah? Of course. Here, east and west means all of the directions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They all belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is the one who told you to face towards Bayt al-Maqdis, towards this direction. He is the one who is now commanding you to face the opposite direction. So it doesn't matter which way you face, the main important thing is to obey the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what the statement means. Even if He tells you to face a different direction every single day, that is piety, that is righteousness. It's not more righteous to face Bayt al-Maqdis or to face the Kaaba. It's not more righteous. It's more righteous to follow the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is more righteous to follow the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whichever direction He tells you to face. And indeed, there's a big significance in this, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded the final ummah, the final messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam, to return back to the way of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Not just to the Kaaba, which was built by who? By Ibrahim alayhi salam. Returning back to the focal point of the oldest house of worship that was actually built by Ibrahim alayhi salam. So this whole significance of change of Qibla, change of direction, is reaffirming this return back to the Abrahamic way, to the way of Ibrahim, which was utmost surrender to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which was tawheed, pure tawheed, worship Allah alone. And it's also telling Bani Israel and the Christians, it's also telling them that the responsibility to carry the message of surrender of Islam and tawheed is now being transferred, has been transferred from the old nations, from Bani Israel, from the Christians, to this new nation, to the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is the significance, that it's a huge virtue and blessing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed this ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to be the carriers of the way of Ibrahim alayhi salam, because he represented the highest level of ubudiyah, of servitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in tawheed and in surrender. in Islam and Tawheed, worshipping the one true God. So this is the main significance of this. And the two fa'idah from this is that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that all of the earth, all of the directions, it belongs to Allah alone. Meaning He's reminding us that everything in this universe, everything on this earth, all of the directions, north, west, south, east, northwest, southeast, whichever direction, it all belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's no difference. One place is not greater than the other, except where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands you to do something. Number two, because the verse says, قُلْ لِلَّهِ الْمَشْرِقُ وَالْمَغْرِبُ يَهْدِي مَن يَشَاءُ. He guides whom He will say. To Allah belongs the east and the west. يَهْدِي مَن يَشَاءُ. Allah guides whom He wills. Allah guides who He wants. So the second fa'idah here is that guidance belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Guidance, hidayah, is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In another way, saying to the previous nations that, don't think that you have the guidance. Don't think that, as the previous verses were saying, that no, it's not guidance if people follow your way. No, guidance is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Guidance is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala points to and commands to and directs you to. That is guidance. Guidance is whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands His followers and His messengers. That is where guidance is. So guidance solely belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Today it's with the new nation, the believers, the Muslims, the final ummah. Yesterday it was with you. Today it is with this nation. And that is where guidance is. So that guidance solely belongs to Allah. It's nobody's personal property. Nobody can say that if you follow us or follow me, that is true hidayah, that is guidance. No, guidance belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And guidance is in obeying the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in terms of, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that يَهْدِي مَن يَشَاءُ إِلَى صِرَاطٍ مُسْتَقِيمٍ. And we mentioned in the tafsir of surah Al-Fatiha the meaning of Sirat al-Mustaqim. But here another added meaning is that Sirat al-Mustaqim, overall, it is the path that leads to every khair, the path that leads to every good. So if you travel this path, you will reach to every type of goodness that there is, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has provided in the dunya and in the akhirah. You will reach every type of good. And guidance, changing the qibla from Bayt al-Maqdis to the Kaaba is included in this Sirat al-Mustaqim. It is something good, it is a blessing, it is something, it is a virtue. There is khair, there is wisdom in this. And the reason why they're called sufaha is because they don't understand this. They don't understand that there is khair in the changing of the qibla. They're called safi, sufaha. Why? Because they don't have the intellect to understand that what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands is total wisdom. Every command that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands, behind it is total wisdom, is total blessings, is not done out of just play or done for no reason. There is a reason behind it. There is a wisdom behind it. There is blessing behind it. So there is khair in this command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But they describe those who question that why did the Muslims change their direction? These people are described as stupid. These people are described as foolish. Why? Because they're questioning who? They're questioning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who's the creator of the universe, who's the creator of their minds, of their bodies, of everything. How can you question the creator? How can you think that you cannot accept this new command? You have better understanding than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He's the one, يَهْدِي مَن يَشَاءُ إِلَى صِرَاطٍ مُسْتَقِيمٍ. He guides whom He wills to the straight path. And this path includes all khair, and this changing of the qibla is included in this khair. it is something good. There is wisdom in it, there's hikmah in it, there's truth in it, there's barakah and blessing in it. But these people do not understand. From the fiqh, which we'll cover, because as some scholars said, that the actual ayahs that actually commanded the believers, here there's no command here, it's just information. سَيَقُولُ السُّفَهَاءُ, that these people will say. But in verses that are coming later on, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands the believers that wherever you are, face towards the Masjid al-Haram, right? Face towards that direction. There's a command there. So when we come to that, there'll be lots of issues around the fiqh of the Qibla. We'll cover that there. But today, just to say, in terms of the fiqh of the Qibla, just in briefly, that all of the ulama, of course, agree that it is one of the prerequisites, shart, for the validation for the salah to be valid. You have to face the Qibla in fard prayers and in nafal prayers, except if there is some kind of unavoidable reason, if there's some darura, like in battlefield, etc. Sometimes there can be an excuse. Or in the nafal prayer, if somebody is a traveler, they're traveling, then on a vehicle or an animal, which they can't control the direction, it keeps on moving regularly, changes direction. There is excuse there on the nafal prayer. But the fard prayer, there's no excuse except for utmost necessary things. But generally, it's fard, it's the condition of salah. And the main thing is to try your best to find the qibla. The condition is to try your best to find the qibla. So this is just a quick point on the fiqh of that. So the lesson here for us, one of the key lessons for us, what is the lesson for us? That Allah's commands are full of truth, full of wisdom and benefits and blessings. You know, we cannot understand, we can't imagine to understand what is the hikmah, what is the wisdom, what's the benefit, what's the blessings of one single command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We will not be able to understand it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hasn't informed us of everything. But this is, we have to believe, have full yaqeen, that this command is coming, whether it's to pray, whether it's to fast, whether it's to avoid this haram, whether it's to do this do business in a certain way, to do marriage in a certain way, to divide up your shares of inheritance in a certain way. All of these commands that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has, we cannot begin to understand how beneficial they are to everybody. Just imagine gambling. It was recently in the news, right? One of the ministers resigned, right? Because of this, they wanted to put a cap on the machines that are in the betting shops. The machines have a £100 limit. They wanted to limit that to £2 a bet. Why? Because apparently these machines are so addictive. These machines where people place bets, gamble, they're so addictive, people end up losing thousands and thousands of pounds. Not only that, I was surprised to hear, I knew the damage that gambling causes, but I was surprised to hear that 2 people a day, 2 people every single day commit suicide due to gambling related problems. 2 people every single day end their lives just simply because of gambling related problems. Either they've lost all their money, they've lost their family, they've lost their home, they've gone into debt or whatever. But look at the that's just one aspect. That's just, gambling is haram in Islam. This is something, the benefit, the blessing. When you read this, subhanallah, you just say alhamdulillah. Amazing benefit and wisdom in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's command. That if you follow one command, you can save the lives of 2 people a day. Not only that, you can save the families, the financial situation. Those who are not dead, half of them are also in severe problems, in severe debt. one of the people they were interviewing, he said, I lost my house, I lost my family, lost everything because of this addiction. And this is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says it clearly. It's from the amal of the impurity of shaitan, because it will cause enmity between you, there's harm in it. Any prohibition, there's harm in it. So this is this is the wisdom of Allah subhanahu, one wisdom that we can see very clearly in one command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the lesson for us is that in every single command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is untold benefit, untold wisdom. And even if we don't fully understand them, we should never question them. And this is happening in the Muslim community. Forget about the non-Muslims, but in the Muslim community, we have people who actually question some of the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have people who question some of the laws in the Qur'an, some of the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Qur'an. They feel embarrassed. They feel this is medieval, this is old, this is not suitable for today, it's not suitable for this day and age. How can we still believe in that? How can we still follow that? There are Muslims who talk like this, or other Muslims who feel that it's up to them whether or not they follow any of it. Or they think, well, it's not really a fard to do X, Y, and Z. So you have people questioning, and I've heard people myself questioning some of the rules of Islam, those which are clear. Of course, there's a difference between if somebody hasn't been told, hasn't been taught, hasn't had the tarbiyah, hasn't had an Islamic upbringing. There's a difference if that person's confused or has a genuine question. Why do women have to cover up hijab? Why do men have to do X, Y, and Z? Why do we have to fast? Why do we have to pray? Why is riba haram? If people are confused genuinely, that's different. But there are people who understand all that and then question or try and say this is backward, or this is irrelevant, or this is not suitable for today. That is, you are questioning the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is you falling into that category of sufaha. You are labeling yourself as someone of shallow intellect, someone who's foolish, someone who's stupid. Why? Because you're questioning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the creator, the one who has all the wisdom, the one who knows everything, the all-knowing, the all-powerful. How can you question his decisions? So this is something for Muslims we have to be very careful of, and we have to educate our communities that Islamic commands, they're not something to play with, they're not something light, they're not something that people can just willy-nilly say, no, this is no more relevant, this was in the old days, it's not suitable for our times. We have to be very careful. We may not understand something, go and educate yourself, go and understand, ask someone who knows, learn from them, this is what we can do. But to question even a single command, and even not just a question, to make mockery. I saw a video that was shared, somebody smoking a cigarette while they're praying, right? So you've seen that, right? Somebody smoking a cigarette while they're praying. He's doing ruku, sajda. Now, mockery of any part of Islam, according to majority of scholars, is kufr. Is kufr. It's not even just a sin or a big sin. It's kufr. If that person is acting and doing that as a laugh, as a joke, you are mocking one of the pillars of Islam. It's straight kufr. It takes you out of the fold of Islam. People don't realize this. Even people sharing it, this and that, whatever, they're not understanding the seriousness of it. So we have to really educate our communities to respect the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whether you do it or not is something different. That everybody will be on different levels. That everyone will have their personal struggles. No one's saying that everyone's going to be implementing the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala equally across the board with everything. Every individual will have their struggles. That's not a problem. Everyone will be on different levels. That's not a problem. Walaikum salam. That's not a problem. But not to mock it, not to deny it, not to reject it, not to say you know better, you're more wiser than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the key thing that we can all learn here as a lesson. So, in summary, because we'll have a shorter session today, there is a social, inshallah, taking place straight after this. So in summary, Muslims have been prepared to take on this new responsibility, as I said. The indication is that the others have lost that privilege, that responsibility of carrying the message of tawheed, of surrender, of the hereafter, the truth about this life, which the Christians had, the Jews had. This responsibility is now given to the Muslims. This change has happened. The Qibla change is also another sign of that. The change in the Qibla is another sign of that. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala returns the Muslims, the final ummah, to the oldest place of worship built by Ibrahim alayhi salam, thereby reconnecting with his legacy of Tawheed and Islam, of worshipping one Allah and submitting to Allah alone. So the Muslims are connected through this change in the Qibla towards the Kaaba to the legacy of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Because he represented the true message, the true surrender, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is indicating that those amongst his descendants, many of them changed the truth or didn't follow it as it was meant to be followed. So therefore the responsibility has now come to this new ummah who will revive the way of Ibrahim alayhi salam, who will revive the way of Tawheed, the way of Islam, total surrender to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, without worship, without making partners. And this is the mission of this ummah. We have to remind ourselves, we're not just here as just pray, fasts, and do our own little things. Yes, that's part of it. But we are part of this nation, part of this ummah that has a responsibility, that is given this. Who else will take this responsibility on? No one, because that's the final messenger. That's the final book. We are part of the final ummah. We have that responsibility to at least clarify to others, to humankind, the truth, the nature of the purpose of this life. It's not about forcing anybody to convert. It's not about jamming this down people's throats, but it's at least to give that message, to convey the message, da'wah, to invite people. This is our responsibility. So we have to be aware of this. It's not just personal ibadah. I just do my salah, I'm okay, I don't drink, I don't eat pork, and I'm fine. No, we have this duty of conveying the message. Yes, there's conditions, there's learning that needs to be done before you go out and convey the message, etc. But whatever you know, there is a responsibility on us as a community. On us as a community, and more so in the condition in the society that we're living in. Most people have a huge misunderstanding of Islam. Most people in this society, it's very clear, have a misunderstanding of Islam due to many factors. We know those factors. But the question is, what have we done as a community? What are we doing? What am I doing every day in my life? What have I done to clarify the misconceptions people have about Islam? What have I done to present Islam the way it should be presented? What have I done to convey this message to people around the country, to people around the city, to people in my neighborhood, or the people in my own building? What have I done? This is the question that we must ask ourselves, because these ayahs are about that responsibility that this ummah has to carry the message of Tawheed and of Islam, of surrender. So, inshallah, next week we have a very important ayah, verse number 143, which is the next verse, inshallah. وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا, this verse. And thus we have made you a balanced nation, a middle nation. We'll go into the meanings of that verse and maybe the one following it. It's a very critical verse. It also comes dead in the middle of surah Al-Baqarah. Inshallah, we'll cover that next week. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq to understand these verses, to try and implement them to the best of our ability, and also to carry the duty of conveying this message to others, inshallah, as much as we can within our capacities. Jazakumullah khairan.